And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin' Bible podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Talkin' Bible. Today we are talking with Jeannie and we're talking about Jesus being divine and we are being the branches.
Oh, jeez. Oh, dear. That was terrible.
That was terrible dad joke, wasn't it?
Yes.
I'm divine and you are the branches.
Yes. Okay. So let's
On
just
that
put
note.
it in English. Yeah. Jesus, the true vine.
Yes,
Yes. I do appreciate your attempt at humor,
that was a pretty bad joke, but anyway.
It's
an
like
oldie.
a
I didn't invent it.
pastor joke.
It's a pastor joke.
Yeah.
I didn't invent that one.
You threw me for a minute.
I knew I would. I wasn't going to give you any prompting on that one.
So this is John 15, 1-8.
Yes, indeed.
That we're doing. And does this appear in other Gospels as well?
No, this doesn't. This is part of Jesus' very long discourse at the end of his Gospel of John, 14, 15, 16, and 17, which traditionally is around the Last Supper.
Is he preaching here or is he talking to his disciples?
He's talking to his disciples. John wants you to think of these words in these chapters as his final words, his final prayer, his last moments to input into his disciples before his death.
And he uses a rich metaphor.
Oh, yeah.
To do so.
One that they certainly would have understood. There's grapevines all over Israel.
Yes, and they loved their wine.
They love their wine.
Yes.
Exactly.
So Jesus says, I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that does not produce fruit, he removes, and he prunes every branch that produces fruit so that it will produce more fruit. You're already clean because of the word I've spoken to you. Remain in me and I in you. Just as a branch is unable to produce fruit by itself unless it remains on the vine, neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Then he continues to go on. Those who remain in me and I in him produce more fruit because you can do nothing without me. If anyone does not remain in me, he's thrown aside and he withers. They gather them and they throw those branches into the fire and they're burned. So if you remain in me and the words remain in you, ask whatever you want and it will be done for you. My Father's glorified by this, that you produce much fruit and prove to be my disciples. God is glorified when we produce much fruit. Is that true?
Isn't that fascinating? That somehow the way we live our lives brings glory to God. This God who doesn't need anything, who is above all, the Bible describes him as being surrounded in perfect glory himself. Nothing that we can add to him would be one way to put it. He's totally self-sufficient. And yet Jesus here is saying that God's glorified by our lives.
Sounds like a very personal God.
Yeah, it's a God who's chosen to allow us to be part of his increase of his own glory. That's personal. I like that way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like he likes us to use our gifts and talents.
Yeah.
That he is glorified rather than we being glorified.
Yep.
He's actually glorified when we produce fruit. Although what is fruit?
Good question, especially here. What is fruit? So I've been doing a bit of study on fruit actually lately, looking at all the different ways and assumptions that we make about fruit. So normally when we talk fruit, we just go straight to the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. And we go, yeah, that's what fruit means. I think that's one aspect of what Paul's talking about. But the more I think about it, the more I think, well, you can produce fruit that's rotten. So...
you don't produce it rotten, just over time. If it lingers, it becomes rotten.
Yeah, but you can have dysfunction in the fruit to start with. Like diseased fruit, which is going to come out. I mean, it's like, a bunch of grapes. We're talking about grapes here. I love my grapes. I have my grapes at home, and very often in my bag of grapes, there's a few in there that clearly have not grown well. They probably had some kind of some kind of dysfunction in their DNA from the beginning or their structure from the beginning. So I think it's more about when Jesus is talking here, he's challenging. He's going to challenge us about what kind of fruit are we producing, and if we stay attached to a good, healthy fruit vine, we will produce good fruit.
Well, he doesn't differentiate there. He just says that you produce much fruit.
Yeah. He's talking about abundance of fruit here. So what's the most...
You're just assuming the fruit is good.
Yes, I probably am, actually. Yeah, I think even then they would know that they don't put every grape in the... when they'd be picking the grapes off, they'd be going, that one's not going in the wine. So they would know that. But to them, fruitfulness in a harvesting culture was lots of fruit. If you have a lean year, it means you don't have much fruit on your vines, but if you have a good year, you have lots of fruit. So it's not so much about, I think Jesus may be talking about the quality, not so much the quality here, but the quantity. That's just my off-the-cuff comment, which is quite opposite to what we often think about when we think about Jesus talking about quality of fruit. But here he's maybe just saying, stay with me and you're going to produce a lot of good fruit, a lot of fruit. And theoretically, the more fruit we produce, the more good fruit we'll produce.
It seems to me this section is about creating and sustaining the community of Jesus, right? This is about everybody staying together and becoming the church. Do you think? If you abide in me, everybody together, and we grow as the church.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it that way before. What's the context of the surrounding passages? Is he talking personally or is he talking to them corporately? That's a really good point. So you're saying it's more about, I'm just going to look it up, it's more about...
I think you can read it personally, but also corporately.
Yeah. Yeah, this is because actually the context moving on beyond these verses is about loving... Greater love has no one than this. They lay down their life for their friends. So yes, there's definitely a corporate context to this.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask, we're talking about producing fruit. How does the church produce fruit?
Yeah, okay. Well, each of us together doing our part will produce fruit as we stay together.
Well, what does it look like?
Good point. You're asking some curly ones today, Jeannie. You're asking some really good questions.
I was going to get straight into it.
What does the church's fruit look like? I think it has to look like people finding hope in Jesus, people being on a journey of growing, of belonging, becoming and building God's kingdom. I think that's fruitfulness. If we can look and go, hey, people are moving along that journey, I'd say we are being fruitful. I think church would say, well, if people are getting baptized, that means they're committing to Jesus, they're giving their all. That's a symbol of giving all. So I'd say that would be part of it. And then the church making an impact into the community by being the hands and feet of Jesus, helping the poor, loving, bringing hope to those who can't find it, upholding justice, all those sorts of things would be part of what I would regard as the responsibility of the church to be fruitful in the world and to be a little pocket of heaven on earth.
Do you think most churches are like that? That's a hard question to answer.
I don't think we think about it enough.
Because my next question is, how does a church abide or remain in Jesus?
Yeah, which is obviously important. If each of us is going to do it and corporately we have to do it, we need to say Jesus-centered. So I think that if we look at historically what has done that throughout church history, we have to go, well, we can go back to Acts 2:42. Abiding in the Jesus means to, be committed to the apostles' teaching, to the gathering together, to the breaking of bread and prayer. So those four things I think haven't changed. That's how we abide in the vine. We gather together, we pray together, we read the word and study the word together, and we partake of communion together. Those things are what will help us abide. And if we aren't doing those things as a church or individuals within the church, and I think sadly the desire to abide together is not what it was. Now we've got all kinds of excuses why we won't meet together as the church.
What do you mean what it was? Do you mean like 5 years ago or like 100 years ago?
Maybe it's the wrong call. Well, people certainly went to church more often a generation ago. It was just what you did in many cases in Australian culture. Yeah, you went to church. So maybe that was it, but maybe then again that was just more a social thing than a real connecting with Jesus thing. Good for the social aspect of a community, but maybe not Christian. I think if you go to times of severe persecution, that's when the church gathered together. When it was at its toughest times in the community, that's when they would find ways to gather. They would go out of their ways together. Think of Chinese underground church. They're gathering together in all kinds of crazy ways because they need one another.
That's right. That's what I was just going to say, because you want people who think like you. You want to find comfort in people and you want to speak to people who are going through the same experience.
Yep,
similar
and then you can
experience
inspire one another, encourage one another, comfort one another. Yeah. But I think in our increasingly secularized, individualized world, we don't really grasp this. We think, I can hang out without the church. I can hang out and still be a follower of Jesus. But Jesus is found in his church. We're going to talk about that on a little bit later in another one this week about two or more gathering. There he is in the midst. Jesus is in his church.
Yeah, well, he came to start the church, to grow the church. And it's from this, it sounds like, well, he is the, he's the trunk. No, what does he say?
The branch.
He's the branch.
Yeah. I am the vine and you are the branches.
You are the branch, yes. So the vine connects to the ground.
Yes, the vine is the main part.
Everything grows off that. So you can't grow outside of that.
No.
If you can't, as you were saying, people are Christians but they don't come to church. How do you expect to be watered
Yep. How are you going to be
through
watered?
the
How are you
vine
going to
if you're
grow?
not part of the
Yep.
church?
Yep. And
That's what this is saying to me.
That's right. And Paul uses the analogy in Romans, and he talks about, cutting off branches and grafting in other branches, which was a common practice where they would graft branches in. This is what's crazy to me today is that the New Testament always talks about being separated from the vine as a bad thing. Today, it's like it's an inconvenient thing to have to attach myself to the vine. That's the mentality we have. Oh, I'll attach myself when it suits me, but I've got to put myself first. And this is back to what I was saying yesterday about discipleship. It's the completely opposite of what we should be thinking. We should be thinking, I cannot live if I'm not attached to the vine. I need to be a part of that vine. I need to be attached to the life source. That's where I'll find true life. That's the cost of discipleship, because it means giving up some things for discipleship.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm on this
statement. Yeah.
I'm on this discipleship thing at the moment. We're doing that later in the year, actually, the theme, but it's really important, I think. There's no easy way out of that, Jeannie.
Yeah, these verses here will throw people when it says you will be pruned,
Yes.
or you will be cast. If you do not remain in me, you'll be thrown aside. Again, thinking of this personally and corporately as well, you can see people who are thrown aside, and you can also see churches who have been thrown aside, I think.
Yeah, well, throughout history, most churches aren't here. I'm about to go and visit, churches in Turkey. What Jesus said, I'm going to, take away your lampstand. Well, that church isn't there anymore.
Yes.
So, there's definitely times at which eventually the church is going to die if it doesn't remain in Jesus. And most churches, historically, don't last more than a few generations, really. There's not many that last beyond a few generations, which is sad. But I think it's often this problem is that stop remaining in Jesus.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because you think you're preaching Jesus, but if people aren't turning up, there's obviously something that's not going as well as you might have wanted
definitely.
it to.
As a pastor, that's always the case. That's the tension is I want to preach. And I've actually had this conversation with other pastors is like, where's the line here? Like, do you preach hard about discipleship and whittle the church down? Or is that pushing people away so they can't hear the church because you can't hear the message because it's too hard to hear the message? Or do you, soften the message and focus on community and connection and friendship and all that sort of stuff, and run the risk of potentially having a bigger community of people, but people who aren't following Jesus? And that's a real tension to wrestle with. And I don't think I have the answer to that, other than the fact that I know most importantly, I feel like what I'll be called for is, did I make disciples? That's what God's going to say is, what did you do with the people I trusted you to? Did you make disciples? And I have to just trust that preaching the cost of following Jesus, but also the joy and fulfillment in following Jesus and living the Jesus way will be enough to be attractive to people. But it's a very real challenge.
But there's a promise in these verses as well, that if you abide, if you make disciples, you will actually grow a lot of fruit.
You will grow fruit. You will be fruitful.
Yeah, even though at times you may be pruned.
Yeah, that pruning is not a bad thing. Sometimes it could take pruning to be an individual pruning. Like I've been pruned. We all get pruned in our lives. God will discipline us. Romans 12 uses the terminology of discipline those he loves. So yeah, discipline could be used as pruning to cut a leaf off here or there to let more light onto that particular part of the bunch of grapes so it would grow or whatever. That's pruning.
Even though that might be a painful process.
Even that process is painful. Yeah. But that's the infinite wisdom of God, that he will prune for that reason. So there's two kinds of pruning. There's pruning for future growth, and then there's pruning for judgment. And I think Jesus is actually activating both those in this context here. Because at one hand he's saying, if you don't produce fruit, I'm going to cut you off. That's definitely a sense of judgment.
That's very judgy, yes.
Yes, but he would be doing it for the purpose of allowing the church to produce more fruit. So unfruitful people who are consuming and who are selfish and who are not living the Jesus way, Jesus would probably rather not have them in the church because they will undermine the fruit of the church.
Yeah.
I'm just glad Jesus is the judge because he finds a way to do that appropriately. That's not really my job. Occasionally, very occasionally it is, but we'll talk about when we talk later in the week. Very occasionally it's the church's leadership's job to do some pruning like that, but not very often. I'll leave that with Jesus predominantly.
Sounds like a good plan.
That. Yeah.
And this statement here, the very first one, I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. it's the gardener that's able to recognize what fruit is rotting or diseased and needs to be chopped off.
Yep.
And when it doesn't. And I believe he's got to be an effective gardener to be able to manage the church and manage the growing vine that is the church in certain places.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. That's up to him.
Yes.
Leave that with him.
And you've got to put your trust in him that he's going to do it the right way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that what Jesus is trying to stay here is your predominant role is to stay connected to me, and the Father will take care of the pruning and the shaping and the ultimate fruitfulness of the kingdom. Your job's just to stay close to me, stay connected to me, and the end result will be that you will produce a fruitful life. Your church will be fruitful.
So how do you see Jesus here? Who is he to you? Is he kind? Is he, I don't know, what is the vine? Who is he?
I would see this as invitational. It has aspects of confrontation to it, but really this is an invitation into life. Because remember you said the promise is much fruit, good fruit, lots of fruit. So Jesus is saying, hey, stick with me, remain in me, and you will produce fruit. So I see this as an invitation. Jesus is saying, I want you to hang out with me. I want you to be with me, and you will experience fruitfulness in your life. You'll live a fruitful, good, wholesome life if you stay close to me. So Jesus is inviting me to be with him.
What about the cost of anything? Because I'm just thinking here, the pruning here, going to the last chapter, the cost will be, things will be chopped off along
totally.
the way.
Yep, I don't think they can be exempt from one another. If you're going to stay close to Jesus, pruning, discomfort, misunderstanding, being misunderstood, being disrespected, all of those things that potentially are uncomfortable and painful in life come with the journey. You're not exempted from those. Jesus isn't saying, come stick close to me and your life is going to be easy. You're not saying that. But he's saying, stick close to me and you will be fruitful. You will produce a fruitful life. And the implication of that is that's when you'll have your most rich and satisfying life. Yep.
All good promises.
All good promises with a cost.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else there?
No. Just what does the word abide mean?
Remain.
Remain.
The NIV translates it remain.
Remain in me.
Pastor Mark Kelsey has a sermon called The Romanians.
Okay.
Yeah, we all need to be Romanians. That's a Mark Kelseyism there. Right?
Oh, dear.
We need to be Romanians. Yes, but you need to stay remaining through it all. Stay close to Jesus.
No matter the cost.
No matter the cost, folks.
And keep the eye on the fruit that is going to be blooming.
Exactly.
Does fruit bloom? No, the flowers bloom.
The flowers
and
bloom,
they turn into fruit.
Then they turn into fruit.
Right,
yeah,
got
that's
it.
right.
Okay.
Got your own cultural.
Yeah, I got it.
Correct there. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's remain with Jesus. Stay close to him.
I have no further questions on this one.
Okay. Thank you.
Today. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you tomorrow. See ya.